Welcome. Thank you all for joining us this morning for the Lifelong Links webinar series. My name is Nicole Seedorf, and I'm the training specialist for the Iowa Department on Aging. I have just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We're recording the webinar this morning, and it will be available on our website at iowaaging.gov. We have opened the webinar with everyone on mute. If you have any questions, please type them in as we go, and we'll be addressing questions at the end of the presentation. Our speaker today is Paige Thorson, who's the State Legal Services Developer, and we'll be speaking about legal resources and referrals. So thank you again for joining us, and I will now turn it over to Paige.
Good morning. Thank you guys for joining us to talk about this exciting topic of legal resources and referrals. My goal for this presentation is to help you to identify legal issues when you receive calls from consumers and being able to make an appropriate referral. Of course, we're not going to be able to identify every type of potential legal problem someone may have, but I'm going to try to cover those that we find are most prevalent in the state of Iowa. And bear with me, we're using a new presentation tool, so feedback is welcome on that too, like if it makes you dizzy or sick. Or if I can't progress forward, sorry. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, so this is a legal issue. Why are they contacting LifeLong Links rather than a legal provider? Well, number one, or two, number one, that you've kind of asked them to. This is LifeLong Links. This is no wrong door. And, you know, we kind of want LifeLong Links to be the entity to call or the number to call if you've got any issues relating to, well, aging or disability issues. They may not know where else to go. They may not know, well, you know, whether an attorney will accept their case or if there's another entity that will be able to help them, but they know that LifeLong Links can at least be a good starting point. And they may believe that they've exhausted all of their other resources, and they're hoping they can help. They're hoping that you can help them address the issue in another way. And what I think is most important, at least for purposes of this presentation, is that they might not identify their issue as being legal in nature. Legal Services Corporation did a study of 8 states back in 2009, I think, and they found that between 12 and 30% of those that they surveyed said that they didn't contact a legal services provider or contact an attorney because they didn't realize that the problem they were experiencing was legal in nature or was one that could be helped with the assistance of an attorney. So I'm going to try to help you guys, help them identify their problems they're contacting you with as being legal in nature. So we keep track of the types of cases that our legal providers assist clients with, and that would be Iowa Legal Aid for most of the state, or the Hotline for Older Iowans, and then also Martha Quint in the area, or the Heritage Area Agency on Aging. And so 23% of the clients are calling with consumer issues, and that's often debt-related. Miscellaneous can include powers of attorneys, wills, those types of issues. Health would be Medicaid. Housing includes foreclosure, landlord-tenant issues. More specifically, the types of individual cases we're seeing, and this is from last year, there were 612 Medicaid cases, but these are the top 5 in order of not case types, but individual cases. Medicaid, collection, wills and estates, powers of attorney, and landlord-tenant issues. So we're going to kind of walk through some of these in greater detail and hopefully help you to recognize when someone's calling you about those types of issues. So I want to help you be familiar with the types of legal issues that elder Iowans are most frequently facing, and then to be familiar with the language associated with those types of legal issues. I mean, often you're not going to have someone who calls and says, hi, I'm living in an apartment and I have a landlord-tenant issue, or hey, I'd like to sell my house, but I'm really concerned about a 5-year look-back period and whether or not I'm going to qualify for Medicaid. Instead, they're probably going to say, we're going to get to Medicaid right away. Something like they're facing the involuntary discharge from a long-term care facility. Often that's for non-payment and can be the result of someone who should have helped them qualify for Medicaid, but it hasn't occurred. So certainly there are other reasons that someone can be discharged from a long-term care facility, but the Long-Term Care Ombudsman's Office finds that frequently it is related to non-payment, which can be resolved by applying for Medicaid. Someone told them that they needed a Miller Trust, and a Miller Trust is a tool used to address a situation where someone has too much money to qualify for Medicaid, but they don't have enough money to realistically pay for the cost of long-term care. So a Miller Trust kind of helps fill those, or to help those people in that gap. They talk about receiving some amount of money and they've lost their benefits, or maybe they don't know anything about losing benefits, but they are just talking to you in general and expressing excitement because they've received some lump sum of money, whether that's an inheritance or they went to the casino and they came home with $2,500, and that's important because receiving those types of assets could push them over the limit and they could be disqualified for Medicaid. So these are reasons you'd want to contact an attorney right away and help them figure out those issues before they become problems. Sorry, there's one other in there. Okay, and then thinking of selling their house or any other large assets in order to, they're probably not going to say spend down, but they're concerned about being able to move into a facility. And a lot of times what we've seen are individuals who want to sell their house. They want to do it quickly so that they can just move on to the next stage, and so they might sell their house to a child for half the cost of its actual value. Well, that's going to disqualify them from Medicaid. That would be considered fraud, and they would have to wait 5 years before qualifying. So anytime someone's talking about selling a large asset so that they can go into a facility, it's a good idea to maybe at least ask them to speak with an attorney before they do some type of thing, or to encourage them to do some estate planning with an attorney. Oh, there it is. And then they've talked about purchasing life insurance or burial plan, and maybe they don't know, maybe they've lost benefits, or maybe they don't know that they will lose benefits, but sometimes those can be considered assets and can disqualify someone from Medicaid. They shouldn't in most situations, but often DHS wants further clarification on what the asset is or what the benefit is or the policy before they'll allow the individual to continue qualifying. Collection. This is a huge one. This is one of our top types of issues that we're dealing with, and it includes someone might tell you that they're receiving threatening phone calls from a creditor, from a contractor, really anyone to whom they owe money, or they're receiving several pieces of mail a week. And these are comments that you're going to get just in passing. They're probably not going to focus on these. They probably don't think that there's anything someone can kind of assist them with. But there is, and these are types of situations where you should automatically and definitely send them to an attorney because there are certain assets, or well, there are certain collection practices, guidelines that collectors have to follow, and often they're not doing that. If their utilities have been shut off, the car has been repossessed, or projects are left unfinished due to unpaid bills. There was one woman who was assisted through one of our legal providers last year who signed a $2,500 contract because someone knocked on her door and said, hey, there are houses in your area that have been affected by termites. And so she said, certainly, well, come look in my garage. And he went in there and found a rotted old piece of wood and said, yeah, you've got a termite problem. I can exterminate the termites for $2,500. So, of course, she did this. She signed the contract for $2,500. Had someone else come over and say, well, yeah, that's a rotted out piece of wood, but I see absolutely no evidence of active termites in your home. So fortunately, the gentleman hadn't actually done any work, but he felt that he was still owed the $2,500 because she signed a contract. And so he was very aggressively pursuing her to get that money. One of our legal providers was able to step in and nullify the contract and say, you know what, actually, she signed this contract on false premises. She's not going to pay it. So those types of issues can be assisted with one of our legal providers. And then powers of attorney. you're probably going to be pretty familiar with these. This is kind of basic, but any type of conversation where they're talking about someone else making their decisions or having control over their health care or financial decisions. They might just be in passing complaining about poor financial decisions being made by a child, and it might seem odd how much of an impact that's having on the individual you're talking to. And it might be because they're making poor financial decisions with the caller's money rather than the child's money, or an assumption that someone else will automatically take care of them. I speak to people all the time, children or grandchildren, who say, well, of course I'm my mother or my grandmother's power of attorney because I am her child. And I say, well, yeah, but have you signed a power of attorney document? And they say, well, no, but I'm her child, so I automatically will make those decisions. And I say, well, no, power of attorney is actually, it's a legal relationship that's created when your mother, in this case, would sign a specific document. So there's a lot of misperceptions about how powers of attorney are enacted and what the role is of the agent or the attorney, in fact, when they're able to make those decisions. And we've got new power of attorney laws here in the state of Iowa that just started in July, and also an elder abuse law. And so there are plenty more things that the legal providers can assist with, especially when there are problems related to powers of attorney, or it sounds like there's a potential elder abuse situation or financial exploitation. Sorry, just oh, there we go. All right, wills and estates. Again, they might flat out ask you, hey, I need a will, I don't have one, and I just like to take care of things. But they also might just say, a lot of times when I'm talking to a consumer, it comes up in the context of them being frustrated with a child, or someone having the expectation that this other person is going to receive the caller's stuff. Or they might just express a desire to change what they leave to a particular person. I've talked to people who quite literally have Post-it notes all over their home to identify which belongings are going to which person, or have it written on notebook paper that this account will go into so-and-so's name, and that's clearly not the appropriate way to handle your assets or your belongings. So any type of conversation like that should go to your legal provider, or to a legal provider. Someone forced the older individual to sign a will, and you might hear that from the older individual or a family member. Often we talk to siblings who really dislike each other, and there is a suspicion that the other sibling forced mom or dad to sign a will. Again, that's, I would say, half the time just a sibling who's trying to cause problems, and the other half, it's an actual concern and something that our legal providers may be able to assist with. Or someone forced the individual to leave something to a caregiver, a child, etc. And you see that in the context of a child or grandchild caregiver living in the same home as the person who you're speaking with, and having some expectation that they're going to receive something, or the elderly individual feeling an expectation that they have to leave something behind to someone else in exchange for them living with them and providing that care. Oops, I'm sorry. Okay, and last but not least, landlord-tenant law, landlord-tenant issues, excuse me. Lack of accessibility. So someone might call and say, they're wheelchair bound and they can't reach their microwave because it's above the stove, which is a normal place for a microwave, but not very convenient if you're wheelchair bound, or not being able to reach certain light switches. Rent increases. There are laws related to the kind of notice that's required to increase rent. We've also seen where landlords will sometimes try to retroactively apply a rent increase to someone because they've made an error somewhere along the way, or they might provide notice and say, hey, in 30 days you have to start paying your increased rent, but this is actually supposed to take effect at the beginning of the year, so it's going to be this large sum of money that you've got to pay up front, and often that creates conflict, which may lead to eviction. And other reasons for eviction that we frequently see are hoarding or failure to pay, for that example, the rent increases. We had one woman who received notice that her rent was increasing. Notice wasn't provided properly, so instead of paying the increased amount, she was continuing to pay the original amount, and it was something like a $50 difference. But over the course of a couple of months, the landlord decided that that was reason to evict. Our legal providers were able to intervene and negotiate with the landlord, and the individual was able to stay in their home. And I think they reached some balance on what the rent increase was going to be. Poor living conditions. So you talk to someone and their home is really hot in the summer, really cold in the winter because they don't have a heater or an air conditioner, or they complain about there being rodents or bed bugs or cockroaches or anything like that in their home. Landlords have an obligation to provide a habitable dwelling, and there's a strong argument that if you're living with bed bugs or you're living in an Iowa winter with no heater and you're paying rent to someone who's supposed to be providing that, that is no longer a habitable environment or habitable dwelling. And then any issues regarding an assisted living program, unlike nursing homes or residential care facilities, hospitals, etc., assisted living programs are, their guiding law is actually landlord-tenant law. So anytime someone's got an issue with an assisted living program or being evicted or discharged, that's something that an attorney can likely assist with. And I have an asterisk there because also we've got an involuntary discharge specialist with the Office of the State Long-Term Care Ombudsman who you can refer them to. All right, so you've identified a legal issue. Who are you supposed to call? Well, in Iowa, we've got a legal program, and it's funded by Title IIIB dollars, so from the federal government. And the money passes through the Department on Aging and to the area agencies on aging, and they all get to contract with a legal provider in their area. So for almost all of the state, the contract is with Iowa Legal Aid or with the hotline for older Iowans. And so you'll want to contact them at 1-800-992-8161. The exception to this rule, of course, is, and this very blurry picture, sorry about that, but is the Heritage Agency. And Heritage actually contracts with a private attorney, Martha Quint, in the Cedar Rapids area, as opposed to contracting with Iowa Legal Aid. So if you're talking to someone in one of those 7 counties, you'll want to have them contact Heritage rather than contacting the private attorney directly, but you'll want to contact Heritage. And I am leaving out one. Scott County has Help Legal Assistance, and you'll still contact Iowa Legal Aid to get to Help Legal Assistance, but that is one other difference, I guess, or unique element to the legal services delivery system. All right, so only 1 in 5 legal problems are experienced by low-income people are addressed with the assistance of either a private or a legal aid attorney. And why is this? Lack of funding. So the reason I'm telling you this is I don't want you to believe that you can forward anyone and everyone to Iowa Legal Aid or to the hotline or even to Martha Quinn at Heritage and believe that that person is automatically going to receive all of the assistance they need because there are several reasons they can't assist a client, whether it be, number one, for lack of funding. Over 13,000 people are turned away or underserved every year through a legal services program. And I should specify that that's nationwide. That's not just in the state of Iowa because that would be bad. But like every other program that we're experiencing, there are only limited funds, and the need far exceeds the resources available to address that need. So someone may call, and it might be at the end of the billing quarter, and they say, I'm really sorry, but we just don't have the resources to assist at this point. It might be because it's the wrong case type. So if someone calls in, and it's pretty easy to say, you might get a caller who says, hey, I was arrested for an OWI. I need legal assistance. I am 62 years old. What do I do? And you might say, oh, great, we've got this legal services delivery system. You should contact either Heritage or the Hotline for Older Iowans. Well, they're not going to be able to assist, and the reason is Iowa Legal Aid is prohibited by federal law from providing assistance to a couple of different types of cases, and one of them is providing criminal defense. The other two reasons are for fee-generating cases, and that's when someone says, hey, I'm being sued, or I want to sue someone, so I was in a car accident, it was someone else's fault. Maybe they're concerned about medical malpractice. I had a surgery and they left a sponge in me. I don't know, I don't know why that's the med mal type of case I just thought of, but they left scissors in me. I don't know, something like that. That's horrible, but if it's a good med mal case, they're going to be able to find a private attorney who's able and willing, more than willing, to assist them with something like that, or anything as extreme as a wrongful death. Someone they know or love died, and it was the result of someone else's negligence or wrongdoing. Not unfortunately, because it's the system we have, but Iowa Legal Aid is not able to assist with that. And finally, they're not able to assist with, it says tort defense, and what that means is, well, it's the opposite of a fee-generating case. It's where someone says, hey, I'm being sued and I need help. So they're on the other end of the car accident, the med mal case, or the wrongful death. However, if they're asking for tort defense and it's related to med mal, that means that they're a doctor and they definitely shouldn't be calling Iowa Legal Aid for assistance. But those are three reasons that, per federal law, Iowa Legal Aid is not able to assist with those types of cases. And then finally, as we mentioned earlier, 12 to 30% of those surveys did not recognize their problem as being legal in nature. So had they known that an attorney would be able to step in and assist them with the fact that they didn't have an air conditioner in their apartment when it was 107 degrees outside, they probably would have called their legal provider, but they didn't know that they could receive help with that. So as I said, those are reasons that maybe our legal providers won't be able to assist, but there are other legal resources. And here's a list of them. They do have their own limitations. So for example, Muscatine Legal Services is obviously only going to assist people in the Muscatine County. Story County, the same. Drake Legal Clinic is located in Des Moines, and it is student-run, or the attorneys are students. So they're obviously not going to be able to assist someone in, say, Storm Lake or in Dubuque because they're students in Des Moines. So it's going to have to be around the Des Moines area. And there are different qualifying factors for Drake University, and it just depends on which clinic. They do have a criminal law clinic. They've got a family law clinic. They've got, I think, a civil clinic, and they've got an elder law clinic. And for elder law, I think you've got to be over the age of 60. There's the University of Iowa Clinical Law Program, and that's going to face some of the similar restrictions as Drake University in that though they are student attorneys, so they're going to have to stick around the Iowa City area. The Polk County Bar Association Volunteer Lawyers Project, which is a mouthful, but again, limited to Polk County, and that is where they've got, as the name indicates, volunteer lawyers. These are private lawyers who are willing to provide some pro bono services. And so they really could handle any type of case, but it's limited again to Polk County. And then of course the private bar. I think that's always something that's good to remind people that, for whatever reason, if they're not able to be assisted through one of our legal services programs, I often find that there tends to be a decent reason for that. For example, they can't find an attorney because they truly have exhausted all potential free resources. So for example, I spoke with one woman a couple of years ago who received $60,000 worth of pro bono services from a private attorney in Des Moines. And then she worked with Iowa Legal Aid, and they helped her for quite a while, and she just added legal issue on top of legal issue, and at some point they had to say, listen, we agree to assist you with this type of case, and you keep adding on top, and there are only so many things we can do. And then the new issues were types of issues they can assist with, like she wanted them to assist her in suing people. And so when she called me, she said, certainly there's something that the state of Iowa is going to do to help take care of me. I'm 70 years old and I live in Iowa. What can you do? And I said, well, let me talk to you about our resources. Have you contacted Iowa Legal Aid? Well, yeah, I contacted Iowa Legal Aid. I said, okay. Were they able to assist you? Well, they did for a while, but then, of course, her reason was that they're incompetent, which I can assure you is not the case. And then she said, so they're not able to help me. What else do you have? And I said, well, have you contacted Drake Legal Clinic? And I said, and I asked her that, and she said, of course I did. I talked to them, but, those student attorneys, they can't handle a case as complex as mine. Again, I assure you that is not the case. And then I said, okay, well, we've got one final option, or two options, but one final free option, and that is to contact the Polk County Bar Association. They've got a volunteer lawyers project. And she said, oh, yeah, I worked with them. I had a really poor experience. They didn't really help me all that much. And I said, okay. So I'm listening to her sad story, and I'm thinking, you're right. There's something we've got to do to help you. And so I contact the Polk County Bar Association Volunteer Lawyers Project, where I find out that, in fact, an attorney had provided $60,000 worth of pro bono services and actually had won a lawsuit for her of $50,000. And so I said, great, that's fantastic information. I called her back and I said, it sounds like you've exhausted all of these resources, except for one. You can, of course, contact a private attorney and pay for their services. And she said, well, I don't have any money. And I said, well, I think you have $50,000. I didn't say it quite like that. I was very kind when I was speaking with her. But but my point is, there's always the private bar, and often I'm finding that if none of these other resources are available, the private bar might actually be the most appropriate referral. All right, I know I'm finishing a lot of it early, but if you guys have any questions, feel free to type them in.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and look and see if we've had any questions come in. And then, oh, yes. Do they have to have an attorney to establish a Miller Trust?
Technically, you never have to have an attorney to do anything. Anything an attorney does, someone can do on their own. That being said, I would never advise that someone do that on their own. Because, especially when you're talking about finances and wanting to qualify for Medicaid, honestly, if you make one mistake, you could be disqualified for a 5-year look-back period. So it's not something I would advise. Certainly, if they knew how to do it, they could. But I would strongly advise that if someone needs a Miller Trust, they contact an attorney.
Okay, and the next question we have is, will the PowerPoint be available? It is not in a PowerPoint format. The webinar will be available, and we will see about having a non-webinar version also posted on the website as well. I'm not 100% certain what format that's going to be in right now. It may be a PDF file, but we'll have the webinar and a PDF available on our website, probably within the week. Okay. Any other questions, comments anyone has? I'll leave it open for another moment here.
Did this presentation format make anyone ill?
I'm going to go ahead and take the phone off of mute here for a few minutes. And so if people want to ask a question, they can go ahead and do that. So if you want to take a moment and mute your phones before I turn this off if you don't have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and unmute us at this time. Well, I'm going to try and unmute us at this time. There we go. Okay. We are bringing people on live now. I've almost got you all on. Okay, we have everyone on live now. Does anyone have any additional questions about legal resources, questions about whether or not something might be appropriate for a legal referral per page?
In August, I'll need to know too for meal delivery. Yeah.
Okay.
I can't remember if she said it was Tuesday.
All right. It doesn't sound like anyone has any questions for us right now. So I'm going to go ahead and end the presentation. Again, it will be available on our website at iowaaging.gov in approximately 1 week. So thank you all for joining us, and please enjoy the remainder of your day.